page 173, where section 2 introduces Hiphil irregular forms. You'll notice section A are guttural letters, section B are first nuns, and now we're going to look essentially at section C and talk about first yods. Now, what's troubling or confusing about first yods is that they revert back to what was an original form that actually had the first root letter as a wow. You don't know that. You do now. You didn't know that. You had no way of knowing that. You had no need of knowing that. But if truth be told, the first yod is actually a secondary development from the original verb form, which historically was a first wow. So instead of this verb being yashav, originally it was washav. Now, that's of no significance or consequence to you. You know the root is yashav. That's the way it's in the lexicon. But the fact of the matter is, when we get into some of the other conjugations, that original form shows up. And you have to sort of understand that the root's going to look like it has a wow as a first root letter instead of a yod as a first root letter. Well, all right. That's not the end of the world. Now, if the root, in fact, is washav instead of yashav, how would we make this form Hiphil? Well, once again, follow the general principle. Pretend it's regular. If it were a regular verb, what would we do? Well, we'd add our hey prefix, right? We'd point it with a herrick schwa and an infix, right? Right? And in a sense, that's what's going to happen. Now, this creates a problem, however, because that wow, now forming the end of a syllable, if you will, a closed syllable with a silent schwa, is going to become no longer the consonantal wow, but it's going to turn into a mater letter. We've seen a similar thing happen at other times, but the fact of the matter is this, what seems to be kind of a diphthong in the language, turns into, they didn't want to have diphthongs that ended with these glide letters like y and w, so they didn't like words like hew, all right? And instead, this becomes a mater letter. Now, again, that's not the end of the world, but you are going to lose that distinctive herrick schwa pointing. The second problem is, which mater letter? Now, if you had to pick a vowel family that would correspond to the original I schwa, you'd want an EI vowel, wouldn't you? Except that the mater letter wow functions as a mater letter not in the EI family, but in the EI-EI-O family. All right? Unfortunately, that's all we can work with a wow. So when this becomes a mater letter, it becomes the mater letter O, and instead of a hey prefix with the herrick schwa that's distinctive of the Hiphil, we get a long vowel ho, she. Well, all right, but there it is. Ho sheave, you still have the infix, and if we'd go on and conjugate this now, what would the feminine singular be? Well, we simply take the masculine, the perfect, third singular masculine, and to make it feminine, we're going to add hey, right? To make it second singular masculine and the rest of the perfect conjugation, that infix goes away. This syllable becomes shav, remember, and we get the form ho shav ta. With me? And from here on out, there's nothing new. But what is a little distinctive is now this first syllable with the mater letter. Working backwards, in other words, if you come to the form hoshavta, and you're kind of scratching your head going, I don't know what this is. Well, what help do you have? Well, I suppose one thing you notice is the ta at the end. That's helpful information. What is just that ta telling you? It's telling you it's perfect, second singular masculine, right? All that from the ending. Now you're looking for a root letter, or you see some root letters in there. You see a hey at the beginning. Well, frankly, what else could a hey at the beginning be except for Hiphil, right? And now you see three root letters, and the first one is a mater letter O. Well, again, running what we've just discussed backwards, you realize that that's really a first yod, which is shown up as a wow and gotten pointed as a mater letter, and your root is yashav.
Same for the imperfect.
So although this looks a little confusing, once you sort of get the hang of it and see what's going on, it can be mastered. Now, Tim, what about the imperfect? Knowing what you know now, you should be able to generate the imperfect form, Hiphil imperfect of the root yashav. You make the call. See if you can write the form. Hiphil imperfect, the first form, third singular masculine of yashav. You make the call. All right, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to change the yod. Oops, I shouldn't make that a mater letter yet, should I? Change the yod to a wow, right? Okay. Now, how do we make it Hiphil imperfect? Well, the first thing we do is make it imperfect with a yod, right? Now we make it Hiphil, which would be pathak shwa plus infix. Right? Now what's going to happen here? This is going to do the same thing that happened in the perfect. And we're going to generate a mater letter instead of that short vowel schwa problem. Which mater letter? Once again, we're just sort of stuck with the O vowel, even though there's no other reason to have an O vowel there in the Hiphil. So the form is yo-shev. And if we would go on and conjugate the entire imperfect, well, now there's nothing you don't already know. Next form would be to-shev. What would this be? No-shev. See, and again, these get a little funny because you're kind of scratching your head wondering where that first syllable came from. The nun is in fact the prefix of the imperfect first plural common. Now we're shopping for a root. You see the infix, which is really helpful for telling you it's Hiphil, and we're left with these three letters, a wow, a shin, and a beith, which doesn't look like a verbal root until you realize that this is in fact the first yod root, yashav, and that's an old friend. Okay? Yeah, Tim.
First singular common imperfect, what would you do?
You tell me. First, you just want to do first singular common imperfect.
Yeah, you've got the
Well, what's the prefix?
The aleph at the beginning.
Good. Change the prefix to an aleph. What's the problem now?